"Sir, please excuse me. I don't think this is the way to my house," Anna said from the back seat, kicking herself for accepting a ride from a stranger. This guy looked official, though. He even had a grill between the back seat and the driver, just like the police. "It's okay, sweetie. I know a shortcut," Clyde said, flashing her a quick smile. He couldn't believe his fortune. She was beautiful, youthful, but not childlike. Her dark eyes and light skin had caught his attention while she walked alone at night. Most appealingly, he didn't recognize her as being from his neighborhood. He patrolled with the neighborhood watch for years now. An epidemic of missing persons gripped his city. After he started patrolling, his neighborhood had been spared. He turned the sedan onto a small gravel road that led to an isolated industrial site. "Sir, this really doesn't seem the right way," she said, covertly trying the door handles. "Sir, please, you're starting to scare me." "It's going to be okay, darling. Just relax." His grin now had an ominous quality in the dim light from the dashboard. She was now nearing full panic, trying both door handles, the windows, finally shaking the grill between the back seat and him. "Please, sir, this isn't the way. Please let me out. My family will look for me," she begged. Clyde parked the car under the cover of an old, rusty building, turning for another look at her in the back seat. "It's going to be alright. Just sit tight. I'll be right back," he said, flashing her a wink. She was now hysterical, trying to kick the windows, scream for help, anything she could to get free from her prison. Clyde opened the trunk and removed his kit. He flashed back to the first time he had done this and how many mistakes he had made. This one would not get away, and they would never find a trace of her, he thought, calming his nerves. He methodically organized his tools on a table beside the car, occasionally checking on Anna. Was she praying? That's foolish, he thought. He kept the gun on her, opening the door, coaxing, "Come out, I'll make it quick." Her fear had subsided, a small grin as she looked up. "You know, bullets won't kill me." He smiled knowingly. She had him reflected in his mirrors. "Yes, but the holy water and this water gun will burn, so..." Her grin fading. "Please, just come out, and I'll make it painless," he said, subliminally pondering why her grin had turned more sinister. He didn't notice the being behind him until the fangs punctured his neck, realizing too late that he left the wooden stake on the table and that she wasn't praying. She was calling for help, telepathically. Anna slid from the back seat to join the feeding, pausing to look into his panicked eyes. "Sir, I told you that my family would be looking for me."
To begin, I'll give you some context. I'm a 25-year-old man living in a one-bedroom apartment with my husband. For privacy purposes, I'll refer to my husband as Tom from now on. Tom and I have a lot of strong commonalities between us, but we also differ in some areas as well. The most prevalent way is most likely our sense of style. Tom is a self-described goth. He's into wearing all black, studs, boots, extravagant rings shaped like goat heads, things like that. Whereas I'm into bright colors for everything, and odd designs, like a shirt with a collage print of cat heads. Tom's sense of style is also his sense of decor. He has many trinkets and decorations that match his style all over. To clarify, it's a non-issue. Although there is one thing he has that will be the main focus of this story: the mannequin sitting in the corner. From the beginning, when I first moved in, the mannequin, whose name is Simon, kind of gave me the creeps. Don't get me wrong, I'm very into creepy things. The uncanny valley of mannequins, though, sometimes gets to me. At first, Simon had been a pile of disassembled parts cluttering the living room. So to be kind, I gave him a nice wash and put it together. For a better picture of Simon, he's in a permanent sitting position. His arms rest on his lap in a casual manner. Because of this, I had to put him on a chair, since he can't stand on his own. I thought this would make him seem less creepy, but it didn't. Now there was a naked plastic man sitting on a chair in the corner. Still looking for remedies, I decided to put clothes on him. That's what mannequins are for, right? I outfitted him with a nice pair of slacks and an overcoat. Then I decided to add on some socks and gloves. But his head was bare and his eyes still seemed to stare into the void, so I had to add a few more things. Luckily, Tom had the perfect accessories: a glittery plague doctor mask, a studded gas mask, and a big fluffy hat. With most of him covered and the sheer ridiculousness of his outfit, Simon no longer seemed so creepy. That is, until I noticed him move. I have a keen eye for small details. I don't always notice everything, but I'm very good at spotting when something's amiss. That's how I realized that Simon's head had been pivoting, little by little, in my direction. To give you an idea of what I mean, I'll give a brief description of the room's arrangement. I station myself on one spot upon the couch. I use a very large ottoman as a table for my laptop, and I stay in front of it all day. From where I'm sitting, the corner in which Simon sits is to the left and forward, sort of diagonal from me. When I was arranging him, I didn't want to feel as if he were staring at me all the time, so I made a point to turn his head away. Currently, his head is almost facing me completely. I know what your first thoughts may be. Tom is adjusting Simon's head to prank me. But I know that isn't the case because Tom is never out of my sight when he's home and awake. Like I said, I stay on this part of the couch, within full view of Simon, and I know Tom hasn't gone near him at all. Another point to make would be that I have seen Simon move in real time with my own eyes, and let me tell you, it's terrifying. It's not a natural movement in any sense. It looks almost as if he's morphing instead of moving, as if his head is morphing his face into a different position rather than moving his entire head. It lasts for about a second before his face reverts back to its original position. My theory is that the morphing is how he moves, although it is very slow going. Every time he does it, his head adjusts a small amount to be facing more towards me each time. At this point, I sort of regret putting those masks on him, but I'm far too frightened to remove them now. One thing that both horrifies me and confuses me at the same time would be when I found one of his socks lying on the floor. Somehow, he managed to remove it. I don't know how, and I don't want to know. Well, it might be useful information to prepare for it happening again, or what else he might do, but I have no way of finding out. You might suggest getting rid of him, or even disassembling him. But would you want to go near him? I sure don't. And I'm not going to let Tom do it either. For now, as long as he's confined to that chair, I feel like it's safe to leave him be. It seems as though he can only move the parts of him that have joints, which means his legs are useless. And who knows? Maybe he isn't malevolent and just gets tired of looking at the same thing and being in the same position all the time. But if I find him anywhere that isn't that chair, I will throw caution to the wind and break out the hammers.
When I first met my husband, he described me as the embodiment of sunshine. I giggled endlessly, saw joy in every little corner of the world, and treated people with an almost irresponsible kindness. To him, I was a saint. I wouldn't call myself a saint, essentially. I'm rather plain. I just don't see the point in moping over every single misfortune that comes my way. Today, for example, I fell asleep right after making coffee, so when I woke up, it was tepid. It was rather irritating, but I decided it didn't matter. So I grabbed the book, reheated the cup, and sat by the window. My husband thinks it's marvelous how much I'm able to think positively. Well, it's easy. You just have to try and ignore all the bad parts of your life. The bad parts, like how my husband accidentally pushed me down the stairs so hard I miscarried. I told him it was alright, we could have another baby. The doctor told me I needed a hysterectomy. It was alright, I said. It was just a test of will. We could always adopt if we really wanted children. My husband called me an optimist, and I was quite the optimist when I filed for a divorce because he would much rather sleep with a neighbor's daughter. He pleaded for my forgiveness, and I let it pass. Forgiveness. My husband says I'm a paragon of all things forgiven. A saint, he says. It's almost patronizing. The way he calls me that repeatedly. A saint. He also called me a saint when I forgave him last night. Well, you see, he told me we can no longer afford adoption, but I walked on him working at his office. He could afford to donate to a 20-year-old on the internet, but he couldn't afford an adoption. He begged, then he yelled, then he hit, and then I forgave. A saint. Saints are supposed to be dead. Lewis Newman never calls me a saint. He calls me baby girl. That's why I've decided to leave my husband. Divorce or none, it no longer matters. I called him today. Said that after my husband left for work, I'd pack my bags and meet him at the airport. I'd take on a new name, a new life, marry a new man. My cup was finally empty. I suppose my husband has left for work, after all. So I got up from the wicker chair in front of the window and turned around to find my husband looming by the door. "Oh God, George," I gasped. "Darling," he whispered, "will you forgive me?" "Forgive you?" I questioned, meeting his gaze. He glanced at the cup I was cradling in my hands, and a nauseating swoop suddenly came over me. What did you... Mr. Newman, sunshine. Now you'll forgive me, won't you?" "George, did you..." "Yes. The bastards poisoned my coffee. I knew it. Oh, but I'll forgive him."
To start this off, I'd like to give you a bit of context. This happened 4 years ago. I'm a girl, and at the time this happened, I was 12, going on 13, in just a month or two. The friend I mentioned in this story was 14 at the time. The friend, Sally, who I was staying with that night, was quite a bit older than me. At least at the time, the 2-year age gap was quite big. At 12 to 13 years old, I was about to start my second year of middle school, whereas Sally should have been about to begin her sophomore year of high school. I met her in the beginning of my first year at a new school. She was older than the other kids in our grade and was considered one of the popular kids, and I think that was what drew me to her at first. We became fast friends, and before we knew it, we were spending every single weekend together. Seriously, every single weekend. Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. It was your typical Friday night. We carpooled to her family's apartment after school. I've always been a picky eater, so when her family had dinner, I didn't eat with them. I just snacked on the Pop-Tart that I'd stowed away in my backpack in case they ordered something that I wouldn't eat. Something to note is that her family was pretty religious. I wouldn't go as far as to say they were fanatics, but they didn't allow their kids to watch horror movies or anything that was rated PG or older. It didn't stem from the desire to protect them from something inappropriate. Sally's mother had an irrational fear that scary movies had satanic messages. We asked to watch The Purge, and her mom obviously said no. After some negotiating, she agreed to let us watch Hunger Games instead. After the movie, Sally and I went to hang out in her room. She put on some music, and being the age we were, we gave each other makeovers. By the end of it, we were looking much older than just 12 and 14. This part of the night is when things started to seem off to me. Sally wasn't the most positive influence. Despite being my best friend at the time, she was manipulative and got off on putting me down. She had a habit of talking to men online and lying about her age. Sally showed me some texts between her and the man she was talking to. I can't give you an exact recount of them, but they consisted of him trying to convince her to meet up with him, and just the usual things you'd expect from a creep online. According to him, he was 19, tall and blonde with soulful blue eyes. Once I saw the texts, I asked if she had a picture of him. Something didn't sit right with me after seeing the messages. She showed me what he looked like, and he was very clearly not 19. This man was at least 40 and looked like he lived in his mother's basement. Then we got a call from him. Sally answered without hesitation, and when I heard the voice on the other end of the call, I felt like I was going to be sick. "You're so pretty. Why don't you come meet me?" he asked. Sally said that she couldn't because she was spending the night with a friend. The mention of that sparked his interest, and then he proceeded to try and ask us both to meet him. Sally, lacking any common sense, said yes. Thus begun her plan for us to sneak out and walk 15 blocks to meet him in a deserted McDonald's parking lot. I didn't want to go. I was raised on stories of what happens to teen girls who meet random men from the internet in person. But after adamant pleading from Sally that she didn't feel safe going by herself, I agreed. We took our phones with us for the walk. I had a kitchen knife stuffed in my bra in case something were to happen, and I needed to defend myself. The route we had to take to get there didn't have very many street lamps, and there weren't any houses. We were surrounded by trees on both sides of us. When we got to the parking lot, the only car parked nearby was a black, beat-up 2000 Toyota Corolla. The car was still running when we got there, and from what we could tell, there was more than one person inside. The man from the picture got out of the front passenger seat and left the door open behind him before approaching us. I turned my flash on so I could see, and he was obviously on something. I can't tell you what kind of drug it was for the life of me, but his eyes were so wide they looked like they were about to pop out of his head. He was jittery and kept twitching. I became very conscious of how big he was, maybe 6 foot 2 inches, around 280 pounds. For reference, my friend and I did not look our ages, even without makeup. I'm about 5 foot 2 inches. My friend was pretty tall, probably around 5 foot 6 to 5 foot 7. We were both significantly smaller than him. The man reached out for us and caught my friend by the arm. I went to get my knife as quickly as I could, and that's when I saw his friends getting out of the car. He invited us back to his car and offered us booze and drugs, but after seeing my knife and I was ready to call the police, he released my friend. I took Sally's arm and ran faster than I ever had in my entire life. We took the long way home to avoid them finding out where she lived in case they were following us. Once we got there, her family was still sound asleep. We locked all the doors, closed the blinds, and blocked him on everything. There wouldn't be any sleeping that night. We were constantly peeking out the window, and to our dismay, that same Toyota was circling around her apartment building, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I never mentioned any of this to my parents out of fear of getting grounded or in trouble. I'm 16 now, and they still have no clue. I still get nervous when I see a car similar to the one from that night. As for Sally, her parents never found out either. We agreed never to speak about it again. Thankfully, she moved into a new house just a few weeks after that happened. Safe to say, Sally and I haven't spoke in 3 years. She was pissed at me for ruining her night, and our friendship didn't last for long after that. We had a pretty bad falling out, but looking back on it now, it was definitely for the better. So to Sally, thank you for teaching me a very valuable lesson and making me realize that some people are best just left alone. And to the man and his friends who tried to prey upon two young girls, let's not ever fucking meet again.